Live. Good morning. Stefan, over to you.
Good morning. I think we will wait until the participants are joining. I see 22 now. I think more to come. Let's wait for 1 minute and then we can start. Perfect. Do you want to share the presentation, Charles?
I shall start the sharing.
Yes, so we can bring it on. Perfect. Yeah, welcome to our webinar today on identity and the world of identity solutions. Welcome everybody. I'm very glad that I have two excellent fellow speakers with me today. I'm Stefan Blumenthal, country manager for Germany, Switzerland, and Austria at Zeotap, and I have Charles Ping with me, managing director at Winterberry Group, who will give us a lot of insights into the world of identity solutions, what happened last year, what will happen this year. And I have Ollie Boyd with me, data partnerships director at EMEA at the trade desk. After Charles' presentation, we will have enough time to discuss of identity solutions together with the trade desk, Zeotap and Winterberry. I will just quickly introduce Zeotap to you and then hand over to Charles. Charles, if you could just click. Thank you very much. Zeotap. Yeah, who's Zeotap? Zeotap, we are a customer intelligence platform. What does it mean? In our platform, we combine a customer data platform to harmonize, manage, segment first-party data with a natively integrated identity resolution to match different IDs of one single customer or one single user in the digital ecosystem, and we combine it natively as well with our big data asset, with an enterprise data asset, where we are able to enrich first-party data of brands and advertisers further, so that analytics, analytical models, data science models can be improved, data segments can be enriched and improved, and at the end, the right audiences can be activated to win, expand, and retain customers. And this makes us very unique, that we have these three components combined in one platform. That's why we don't say we are a CDP, we say we are a next generation CDP. So we are basically a CIP, which is the next evolutionary step in MarTech, a customer intelligence platform. And in addition to that, we are establishing ID Plus in the market, which is on the next slide. ID Plus is one solution to replace third-party cookies in the future. It's our universal ID, and it's based on our identity graph. How does it work? Just quickly, I think Charles will shed more light on different identity solutions in a minute. Our ID is based on persistent identifiers. That means we can connect hashed email addresses or hashed telephone numbers of a brand, of an advertiser, with ID Plus IDs. The same we are doing on publisher websites. So when a user is giving consent and is logging in into a publisher website, or is generating a lead, is signing up for a newsletter or something like that, is basically giving his email address, then we are able to connect this email address to an ID Plus ID per publisher, and the user can be identified based on this ID Plus ID on publisher websites. So the different ID Plus IDs for one email address or one user, for example, for Stefan at gmail.com, are then basically matched in our identity graph and transacted in the digital ecosystem, resolved in basically via DSPs and SSPs in the programmatic ecosystem, like the trade desk, for one-on-one marketing. So one-on-one marketing based on data which is activated based on ID Plus IDs is still possible. And of course, tracking, measurement, attribution, and so on is still possible, because users can be identified and addressed via ID Plus IDs in the future. And yeah, ID Plus is an open initiative, so we are very open to also cooperate and match with other ID solutions. That's why we are happy to have Charles today, who will give us more insights into the ID world and the world of ID solutions. How the market is evolving, and I'm super glad that he is here to give us more information on this hot topic in 2021. Thank you. Over to you, Charles.
Thank you, Stefan, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to tell you why we've written a white paper on identity and also who we are. We wrote the white paper back in Q2 last year. Well, there wasn't a lot else to do in Q2, was it? No, we'd planned it beforehand, and as we launched it, we all got locked down. As we finished writing it, Apple announced iOS 14 changes. So we're right in the eye of the storm, really.
Charles, you are always a little bit
quiet.
Yeah, quiet. Yeah, I think you need to be get a little bit closer to the microphone. Sorry.
I shall be closer to the microphone and louder. Is that better, Stefan?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay. Now, the way that we approach this, because we approach these subjects periodically. Winterberry Group is a management consultancy based in New York. We focus on data, advertising, and technology. And we visited identity back in 2018. But by golly, the world has moved quickly since 2018 to now. So we wanted to revisit it because the cookie changes, because the privacy changes, because there's a trajectory of how the world is moving. So we interviewed 120 individuals, 60 companies across UK, Europe, and the US. The notes from our interviews, the written notes, were the size of 2 Dickens novels. There's a lot there. And because we're a consultancy and we don't sell this research, nor do we sell identity solutions or technology, we have sponsors that help us, and Zeotap we're very pleased to have as one of our sponsors on this paper. The thinking comes together over a period of time, and when we interview people in this process, we never quote them, nor do we quote their company, and we find that's a really useful way of making sure they tell us what they're really thinking, not necessarily what they're allowed to say by their PR department. So the degree of thinking that we get in the background of the paper is quite significant and different. We also don't put people in quadrants or quarters or whatever. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to see round corners in a market. What we're going to discuss today is what's identity. You probably think you know, you might not. We're going to have a quick look at the evolution of identity solutions. We're going to look at the market evolution, how it's changing, and our outlook and a forecast that we built in September last year around the market size and growth trajectory for identity within Europe, both UK and continental Europe. We still consider Europe to be a single thing unless I specifically mention the UK separately. I know that's unfashionable in 2021 these days, but that's how the market works. What is identity? I suppose the easy solution, is that people mix it up. Data and identity are used interchangeably. Our view, and being consultants, we tend to try and be precise on these things. Data is an attribute that can be used to represent an identity. But identity is the effort to recognize individuals across customers, prospects, platforms, devices. It is not necessarily the technology. We will get to identity resolution and technologies later. They are different, but let's keep that in mind. It's the effort to get things to link together, not the way you do it. Now, we think there are 6 critical factors driving the identity landscape today. First, the explosion in the number of addressable devices. When we looked at it in 2013, I think it was an average of 3 to 4 addressable devices per individual. We've now got 7, 8, 9, in some markets, 12 addressable devices per person. And not all addressable devices are personal, and not all, and we see that with TV, and we'll come back to that. But that explosion has meant that if you want to have a decent experience, be it as a brand experience or a programmatic targeting experience or a broadcast experience, you need to be smarter. The continued deprecation of third-party cookies. We know we have a guillotine at the end of this year where Google removes them from Chrome. We've been living without them in other platforms for a while. But what surprised me as someone that's worked in privacy and consultancy in this sector for a while was the fact that people were willing to ignore the large proportion of the market that were not using third-party cookies right the way up until the point that Google pulled the rug. There has been the recognition that identity is a key thing within marketing and advertising. Actually, this kind of sits on the top of customer centricity drive, of people realizing that relationships between brands and consumers need to be cherished and every touch point is valuable, and a move away from the siloed point solutions of customer service and marketing that have existed in the past. That ties into some of the things around how orchestration and decision making works. Video has been one of the stories of 2020. If you read the Alphabet Google quarterly financial outcomes, and you see the use of YouTube, if you look at ITV in the UK and the adoption of digital broadcast video on demand or any of those channels, people are consuming video very differently, and it's been driven by COVID and being locked in the house, but it was happening anyway. Understanding the identities there is really quite a challenge. I will confess that my Netflix and my Amazon Prime account are used by both my children, and neither of them in the same property as me, and that's not uncommon. So there are challenges in this market. As we look at the cliff edge of cookies disappearing, measurement and attribution and optimization, that virtuous circle that starts with planning, goes to activation, gets to evaluation, and then goes to optimization, is going to be difficult. And if you haven't got something that you understand the scale of how it's going to, of how you can measure, even if it's not complete, I mean, it's not even if it's an incomplete measurement, at least you know the boundaries of it and you've tested it in a land where third-party cookies still exist. You'll actually have something to extrapolate into the land where third-party cookies don't exist. So that's been driving a lot of experimentation and adoption. And of course, media owners. Media owners have been desperate to try and prevent data leakage and gain more control and gain a better value for the inventory that they're trading. And the cookie moves by browsers, there's one argument that says that's going to really hurt publishers. There's another argument that says it's the driving force that's going to make them actually build proper relationships with the consumers rather than very light ones that are monetized via the long tail. So those are the 6 factors driving how the world's working. We see first party, there are 2 or 3 terms of the year last year. One was COVID, one was new normal. And in our marketing world, probably first party sits in there. We see first party at the intersection of the 3 primary ecosystems where all this works. At the top, we've got programmatic paid digital media, where this is where you normally think of identity and targeting. On the bottom right-hand side of your screen, this is addressable TV, and I've already mentioned the massive growth of CTV and OTT. It's slightly confused by the fact that we don't have, in the UK and Europe, there's not a cable culture the way there is in the States. So the never corders and cord cutting and so on, which are the language of broadcast, don't exist to the same degree, but everyone is going to be watching more and more television out of scheduling and on devices that don't have aerials or cables and come down a telephone wire or a proxy telephone wire. Therefore, those are all addressable. One of the challenges of TV is the trading market is never going to be programmatic like news media is to the same degree, but it's definitely going to be partially, and we see this in drives like Planet V from ITV. And first party is used in personalization on own, so making the experience on your own website better. This has been hampered by, as I said, point solutions where the thinking, the brain, the decisioning and orchestration of what happens in your website is something that exists within the content management system. Intellectually, that should actually use a broader span of data than the content management system has and should be driven from somewhere else. But that's how the world works. That's where identity is currently being utilized. So let's have a quick look at the evolution of identity solutions. First thing, let's tell you what an identity solution is. We told you what identity is, or what we think identity is. An identity solution, the coordinated activation of platforms, data, supporting services, the important bits in bold at the bottom, as always with these type of slides, persistent recognition of audience members across devices and other promotional and transactional touch points. So you've got identity on the one hand and you've got solutions on the other hand, and the two work hand in hand, but it's important to know that they're slightly different. We look at the evolution of a process flow as to how identity is utilized across the market, and this slightly complex chart takes you through from left to right in the time-honored way. I'm not gonna take you through it, but yeah, if we say, I'm not going to take you through every line of it. Consumer consent, ingestion of data, management of data, resolution, output. No, that's where it gets interesting. And use cases. As I said before, the use cases are what should drive everything. And if you don't have a strong and viable use case, why are you playing in this territory? There is a degree of experimentation that's needed to understand things, but the other words that lurk in the middle of this that start to become really important, pseudonymized, anonymized. When you talk to people in the US, they talk about hashed emails as a kind of a gentle smudge over a layer of data so that you can't see it. It's kind of a modesty blanket. In Europe, we tend to be slightly more diligent and go into the world of pseudonymization and have it anonymized in such a way that you cannot re-engineer an understanding there. And those things start to color your view of, is a solution that's developed for the current US market actually going to fly in a European market? And it's interesting that most of the creative innovation that we see in advertising technology, or a lot of the creative innovation in advertising technology is being born under the cudgel of GDPR, because you have to be smarter when you've got a fiercer environment around you. So let's look at the types of solutions that are emerging that don't rely on third-party cookies. And I'm deliberately not mentioning any brand names at this point. You can decide what fits in wherever. The first one, the one at the top, the programmatic identity based on fully authenticated first-party data, which the owner can use across multiple properties. This is the classic walled garden. And we all know what we mean by the classic walled garden. And the number of people playing in the walled garden is expanding, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But that's the one that historically has everyone going, oh, look at that. That's really unfair. They've got everything. Well, maybe they have, maybe they haven't. The second one down, if you match your data to someone else's set of data to cross-reference it and then create a common ID, these exist in varying scales in varying markets. In the US, where it's easier to build an almost national database of individuals because the legislation is laxer, it's easier for that to be scaled via one place. In Europe, you tend to have to match across a number of different personal data reference sets to start to get things, and that's where it becomes interesting, because the common IDs then have to be able to link to one another. So it all starts to ladder together. The third one down, a pseudonymized ID token, just designed to facilitate programmatic trading. So you take an encrypted token from one person's first-party data, and then it's de-encrypted at every part in the chain. You can probably guess where that sits in the landscape and who the vendors of that are, but that's a different solution. All of these approaches are in play. The next set of solutions, the second-party data environment. We've just read the paper on data collaboration and second-party data, but that's where, if you can't be a walled garden in your own right, can you gain some of the walled garden benefits by being friends with people having it either one-to-one, peer-to-peer, or a small group peer-to-peer kind of sharing environments to build enough scale. And you could see this happening in media trading in certain environments. And I'll break my rule about naming things, but I don't mind because it's not the same thing. Ozone clubbing together to sell things. But you can also see it within data environments. The fifth class of solution is the household solution. Now that problem of my indiscriminate sharing of my Netflix and Amazon Prime logins with my children, it works the other way in that I borrow their Disney Plus. I borrow the cheapest one, they get the more expensive ones. That's the way of being a parent. But there has to be ways of understanding households differently from individuals, because you cannot, that experience that you get on certain types of screen where you log in as an individual, the Netflix kind of, you have 4 people and different icons, and Disney Plus do the same. You can't guarantee that that's always going to work, and it's definitely not going to always work when it's a shared environment and you're watching it on your 55-inch Samsung with 3 people on the sofa. Who's consuming it? You don't really know. Who's logging? You don't really know. So there has to be a different form of identity that understands when precision isn't there. The final one is contextual targeting, and that's becoming really quite warm, as we know. The advances in contextual targeting and language understanding are so significant in the past year, 18 months, and image understanding. Some of the video approaches are really quite smart. And is that identity? No, it's not identity, but it's a solution to the problem of identity. And any person trying to say, okay, what's the problem we're trying to solve, is going to look at all the solutions that can solve it, not just ones that happen to fit into the bucket called identity. So that's kind of the landscape that we go on. The direction of identity is being shaped by regulators and browsers. I liken it to, there's rules of the land, that's what the regulators do, and there's rules of the casino, or rules of the landlord of the pub, and that's the browsers. It doesn't matter if you're over 18, if the landlord doesn't like you, you can't go in the pub. That's the relationship between data protection regulators and browsers. And it has been interesting in North America to see that the lack of federal legislation, because it's a federation of states, and the disparate views of states based on a number of attributes has meant that the impact of a technology company's policy decision on a text file that's dropped on your machine has had a more significant effect than probably 20 years of legislation in that country. That's really bizarre. However, I'm not sure that's going to last forever. Kamala Harris, who by tomorrow afternoon will be vice president, was Attorney General in California when CCPA came in. So I'm expecting some noises of shaping of data protection in the US to start happening. I don't expect anything to happen for a year or two, but I expect the noises to be different. And that's going to create a landscape where people are designing solutions ahead of the regulatory curve and ahead of the browser-based curve. So things like the rejection of fingerprinting by browsers. Apple's been playing a game of whack-a-mole with ITP on that. Google has said they don't like it, but I've yet to see any great actions on it. But it's coherent with a European view of data protection legislation to not like fingerprinting. Google's privacy sandbox currently being opened up like Pandora's box by the Competitions and Markets Authority in London to see whether it actually is what they think it is, and whether the removal of cookies and the provision of the sandbox is unfair competition. It's going to be interesting to see. There are some good stories coming out of it, but you never really know because it's not been done at scale. We see clean rooms as being a key part of the future for moving data. That concept that you can move data without moving data is important. The concept that you can prevent data leakage, and the concept that you can trade with data in a way that doesn't cause your legal department or your information security department to get bogged down for 6 months, particularly in UK territories or CPRA territories when California moves to the next stage of legislation. That's really important. And does anyone think that maids are going anyway except the same way as cookies? I think they largely are. So the directions of solutions have to be anchored in things that avoid a long-term dependence on any form of technology that's likely to be sunsetted by the providers. So let's look at market evolution across the ecosystems, the way the world works. I said that within owned properties, personalization on owned, the use of broader data is frequently not done properly. That's changing, partly because as first parties become one of the words of 2020, the importance of data collection and the management of first party has become something that's front and center of a lot of board agendas, not just something done by the CRM department or the direct marketing department as it was or whatever. Key to this is the accelerated adoption of CDPs and CIPs. They've been through a phase of massive adoption. They're finding their feet in utilization and implementation, but that starts to be a core of, can I link all the information I know in real time to make decisions that then I can execute in my CMS? That's sensible use of identity. Analysis has never been easier, even if analysts have never been more expensive, but the integration of analytical products, tools for insights and for in-flight optimization is something that can drive your owned properties. And the decisioning and orchestration layer, that starts to become something that people can really utilize. And the key thing to getting all this right is you have your data collected in one place, you make your decisions in another place, and you make your activation in a third place. You do not make decisions in other places. You don't embed decision making into an activation layer just because it's a widget that the vendor provides. That's the thinking that smart brands are putting forward into the world. Within programmatic, I see a happy landscape here. Now, if you imagine kind of a lovely valley in the Auvergne, where at the head of the valley, you've got a tall castle with high walls. That's the walled garden territory. And I have named some potential players in this market here. That's the classic walled garden, characterized by a large share of the personal data coverage, a high frequency of impressions, an owner-managed closed data stack, and little or no external data sharing. You can put your data into it and you get information out. You do not get attributes tagged to individuals as a rule. Everyone thinks of Google, Amazon, Facebook, but we've seen Walmarts and various other people start to be able to scale in that way in walled gardens. And it's been particularly interesting seeing how retail media has changed partly through these moves and partly through COVID to make the large grocers even nearer to proper walled gardens. Below that, and as we come down our rolling Auvergne landscape, we see large houses with private gardens. They're not quite walled, but they have fences around them. But they have scaled authenticated audiences that are of sufficient volume and frequency to be meaningfully moving and not static. They own or license an advertising technology stack. And one of the characteristics is, because they're not as dominant as walled gardens, their fences and hedges are more permeable. So if you do a deal with them and you're the right kind of, and it's the right kind of deal on both commercial and long-term terms, it's not out of court for you to put data in and to get real data attributes back out. So it's not the blind box that a walled garden is. And those private gardens are growing and are very interesting. and it's part of the media owners landscape to start playing in that territory. You then get to lower down my imaginary Venn Valley here. You get to communal gardens where people are sharing things because they have to share to get enough space. And whether that means, whether you imagine this as an allotment or a communal garden, I'll leave it to you. These are alliances where people club together to make up for that lack of scale or frequency by collaborating. And this may be collaborating via shared logins, something like a NetID type approach. It may be collaborating via the shared use of clean rooms, kind of an InfoSum approach for want of a better phrase. But that sharing and collaboration communal gardens is going to be a key part of the future. I don't know whether people are moving slowly towards that because they want to see how close to being a private garden they can get, or whether people are just experimenting slowly because peer-to-peer is easy, peer-to-peer-to-peer is hard, peer-to-peer-to-peer-to-peer is kind of 10 times harder. And the last one, the rolling hills. These are the media world where you can't put up registration rules because the content doesn't justify or the user experience doesn't allow for it. This is the long tail. They've benefited from information gleaned on websites that weren't their own, that's been attached to theirs via data management practices. They're going to have to move into the world of contextual pretty strongly. They're going to have to utilize all the solutions that are available, but there's a mixture there. I've seen contextual solutions that are putting up really strong showing, so I'm not as depressed about the outcome for anyone in the rolling hills territory as some commentators are, but the game is yet to be won. Now, when we look at the identity approaches we talked about, the proprietary first IDs, common IDs, tokens, so on and so forth, and we look across the different parts of my landscape, the walled gardens, private gardens, common gardens, rolling hills, we put a simple scoring together here that if it's a black dot, it says it's high probability of adoption, and if it's a clear dot, it's a low probability of adoption. So yeah, walled gardens, they don't need to do much else other than proprietary first-party ID. Private gardens are going to need to play in multiple territories to maximize the value of their data and their interaction with brands. Communal gardens are going to rely similarly across a broad range, but less on first-party and more on second-party and common identity tokens. And the rolling hills are going to be very strongly either in the common identity token territory, a little bit of second party where they have it, and contextual targeting. So that's a view of where we see the different approaches on the left-hand column being used by the different ways the market breaks up across the top columns. Now, advanced TV, the rate of change is accelerating as money's moving from linear. I mentioned this before, but it's still a very fragmented infrastructure. Within the North American market, you've still got people believing that owning the glass, so being a set manufacturer, is a version of controlling identity. And frankly, I can't remember what make of television I've got. I know what channels I watch, and I have a dedication to them, and I know that I know which ones I'm registered with, and I would expect them to have the data. I kind of, it's a non sequitur that someone who I've paid for a piece of technology that then provides no other value or service gets in there. But that's the way the market in the US is running. I think European is going to run slightly differently, where the channel owners, following the media-owned path of first-party data aggregation, even though they've never been cookie-based as such, because cookies haven't been such a thing in this market, are building different ways to understand their users. There's still a challenge of tracking individuals and shared devices, and that this market is moving so fast that you have to keep on it every quarter to know what's changing. The investments being made in some of the identity and targeting solutions by some of the US data companies look very interesting. Whether they scale into Europe, and we're talking about Europe here today, I don't know, but there's some very interesting moves happening there. the thing to remember is TV is never going to be the fully programmatic world that maybe digital news media is. I think it's the balance is going to change, and collaboration is going to be an interesting part of it. It's very interesting to watch ITV in the UK's Planet V proposition, where they have the ambition to open it up to other participants using the same trading technology. That's quite an interesting use. Watch that space would be my words. So how will these changes impact the market and spending in the market? We've got 6 trends to watch as we get towards wrapping up here. The focus on scaling first-party data collection, everyone claiming they have an identity graph. We're going through a phase of growth. There will be a phase of consolidation at some point, but the first-party genie ain't going back in the bottle, and anyone who thinks they can get around it is going to be in trouble. With collecting first-party data does come a responsibility between a brand and an individual consumer. And if you say something to a consumer that's hidden in a consent management process that you then rely on further down the line, it's probably going to bite you on the arse at some point. So don't go there. We see the difficulty in conducting measurement and attribution causing something close to a back to the future. When I was young and we didn't have cookies, we measured things using research techniques and extrapolated them across the base. We're going to go back to some of that, and some of that is going to need to be tested during 2021, whilst we still have cookies and non-cookie technologies that we can experiment with. That problem's not going away, but the idea, there's a fallacy in the idea that because you could count every cookie, that was what really mattered. And the old mantra of not everything that you can count counts, not everything that matters you can count. So you've got to get your head into understanding what's really driving it, not what's just easy to measure. We see the growth of collaboration clean rooms, cohort learning, flocks, as Google puts them, started to be very important and very powerful. Some of the initial outcomes from flock tests that I've seen, okay, maybe people are just showing their good side. They're kind of they're putting their best side towards the camera, but they are sufficiently interesting enough to suggest that a lot of what we talk about in identity could be rolled up and aggregated into cohorts for the purposes of privacy, either on behalf of the first-party data collector or for the relationship between a data collector and a consumer. So it starts to get very interesting there. There's going to be continued regulatory engagement. As I said, we've got the Competitions and Markets Authority looking at Google. I'm seeing them on Friday this week, so it'd be interesting to hear what they've got to say. I'll probably not be able to tell you, but it'll be interesting. The regulatory engagement from the States, the regulatory evolution in the UK post-Brexit, the gradual move towards some kind of e-privacy coordination in Europe that will affect the UK even now is important, because a lot of the inconsistencies we see between European geographical territories is down to the implementation of the previous e-privacy legislation being done on a country-by-country basis. So don't expect a totally stable landscape there. In housing, what I've described in the previous half an hour is quite bloody complex. I have a belief that this is going to cause a pause to some in-housing efforts because of the increased complexity. I'm not an agency, I hold no brief for an agency, but I think this is a classic scenario where it's useful to work with an agency and some experts, because the agency model where they work across multiple clients and the learnings from one client affect how they approach the problems for another client, that's a classical scenario where the complexity can be managed by using other people's brains. And we're going to get this question coming up in the questions, I suspect, later. You need to have cooperation on flexibility of solutions. They will consolidate. You need to, the experimentation will carry on through this year and into early next year. And then people will start honing down on the solutions that they're going to, or solutions they're going to back and the solutions they're going to back away from. And that's a trend that's going to run through this year. So the noise we've had around identity over the past 9 months really is going to continue for the whole of 2021. I suspect also that there's a GDPR-ish moment where a number of brands are asleep on the job and are going to wake up sometime in Q3 this year in a panic and try and implement solutions very quickly. That's a classic response. There's going to be 20-25% of the market that do that. They did it with GDPR. They do it with they've done it with they've done it with Brexit changes. You can say the government told them too late, but let's not get into that argument. But there's a natural tendency. There's always a chunk of people that leave it slightly too late, and the market will be able to help them in a slightly different way because they will have learned more. Finally, one of the things we did is we have a set of models that we use to understand the markets for advertising and marketing services, both in Europe and the US. And they're primarily used by investors, private equity, people like that, to understand how the market goes. We did a deep dive into the European identity market, and we expect over the next 3 to 4 years, 15.5% CAGR, compound annual growth rate, taking the market from 2.6 billion to 4.8 billion. So there's $2.2 billion up for grabs over the next 3 to 4 years in an expanding market. That is a reason why there's a lot of investment still in the market. But that investment is backed by the fact that brands are going to have to move into this market in a different way, and that data and certain parts of data services are going to take a larger proportion of budgets to achieve their objectives. That's where measurement and evaluation starts to become really important. That was what I wanted to talk to you about. I've taken up 3/4 of an hour of our hour, so that probably leaves us in a good place to go into the question and answer session, Stefan.
Great, thank you very much, Charles. Great insights. Thanks a lot. We already have one question or two questions. Yes, we will share the material afterwards. Okay, I can answer this question. And I think we have one question for you, Charles. It's do you have a view on the split or market size across various gardens, e.g. how many of FTSE 100 are in each garden?
We've never looked at it that way at this point. That's a perfectly honest question. There's 2 or 3 answers to this. Perfectly honest, no, we haven't looked at it that way, and it's evolving too fast to start to make that judgment, particularly when you look at some of the retail sectors and the way that they're changing. Secondly, as a consultancy, if I had that information, it would probably be paid for by someone that was looking to buy them or buy into them, and I might not be able to tell you. But no, the honest answer is we haven't looked at it, and I don't think you could look at it yet. You could probably try and do a benchmark in Q3 or 4 this year, but there's a degree of subjectivity about the difference between the various gardens, and there's kind of a phony war. That because there's an established trading mechanism based on third-party cookies in the current environment, that there is a first mover disadvantage to putting all your eggs in one basket at the moment. So people are going to continue to trade in the current mechanisms whilst experimenting with new ones, and therefore there's going to be no complete picture until much later in the year. Don't think that answered the question fully, but it's as good as I can give.
Okay, thank you, Charles. I've got another question for you. What do you think, how ready are participants for the loss of third-party cookies already? Will there be a GDPR-ish panic rush, or are the advertisers and publishers ready?
I think the publishers are more ready than some of the advertisers. The publishers that have the chance of authenticated, either in prospect terms or whatever audiences, are better organized. You look back to the history in the UK of the Telegraph's, was it 11023? I always forget the numbers. The number of paid subscribers, the number of readers, and the year that it's going to be done by. That strategy has been in place for a number of years. So there are people there that have got long-term approaches in play. There will be certain advertisers who either because they're distracted or it's not a focus of them, are just running with the current trading environments and will panic in Q3. And I think that's probably 20–25% of the market is going to do that, despite what people like Zeotap or Trade Desk or Winterberry try to tell them. It's just the nature of it. There will be a GDPR rush, and there will be some fudges at the end.
It's interesting because, I mean, in the German market, we see a lot of traction coming from advertisers, actually. So big advertisers are evaluating different ID solutions, running RFPs for that. They want to run tests already on different ID solutions. And we are running the first tests, and which is great. And I think, but also the publishers, of course, they need to react, and they are evaluating and integrating different ID solutions as well. But I think the advertisers are also quite, at least the big ones are acting. So which is great to see, actually.
The big ones are definitely experimenting, and there may be a classic element of the Germans always being slightly better organized on this, and having and also you have more clarity in some of your data protection aspects that means it's nearer to the center of a lot of companies' thinking. So there's a national skew, but in the UK, large companies are experimenting. They haven't decided where they go yet, and there's also a limit to how much experimentation you can handle when you've got a team that's stretched and divided across bedrooms around the country, and all the challenges that came with 2020 and are coming with early 2021. It's difficult to scale some of these things.
Great, Ollie. What's your opinion on that? And who should be leading and owning identity initiatives? What do you think?
Well, I think certainly no one technology company or technology platform should end up owning the space. Also, it's not just one single space. So you know, when it comes to it's not that simple. Obviously, for brands and publishers, identity touches so many parts of their business that you know, each company needs to evaluate what's right for them. I would say the good thing is, from who we're talking to, it does seem like identity is front of mind for most on both sides that we're engaging with. It seems like all major advertisers, certainly the big guys who have the resources to do so, are pushing hard into it. On the supply side, I say everyone is thinking of it front of mind. I would agree with that they're kind of leading the way. Obviously, Winterberry's kind of evaluation has showed there's so many different solutions out there, and the market is definitely fragmented because legacy data is fragmented, that there's going to still be a lot of choice and experimentation that's needed. So it feels like we're at the beginning, and that kind of the feedback we're seeing is that the market is pushing for kind of more coordination and connectivity. I think that's most important. So it feels like collaboration between those of us who are offering solutions is probably a key focus this year.
Perfect. And we have one great question coming from Dirk. Do you expect that the third-party cookie will really go away? Because I mean, we have now publishers implemented CMPs, and now legally should everything be fine, basically, in programmatic? What would you say, Ollie?
It's an interesting point. I think you can't 100% take it for granted. I mean, bear in mind, we have to remember where this all started, right? It's fundamentally a privacy and data security issue at the heart, right? No one set out to change cookies for the sake of changing cookies. They're a 25-year-old technology. They did us well for quite a long time, but clearly there's not enough functionality for what we're seeing is needed in the future to go on. And I think we have to remember that's at the heart of all of this. So you can't take it for granted. I don't think we could also take for granted the kind of the time, Google's original timeline of the 24 months is going to stand. Obviously things have changed a lot. And there's it also, when this whole piece kind of took off early last year, certainly kind of in the brand's minds, it feels like there's still a lot more to unpack, and there's a lot more space for the market to mature as well.
Yeah, there was one person we interviewed who was based in the States who characterized it very nicely. It was never the fault of the third-party cookie. It was the fault of what you did with the data that was associated with the third-party cookie. And whether Google's actually going to do it, whether the competition regulators say it's too much to their advantage, I have no opinion on that, and I'm not going to gamble on it. But the problem was not the cookie itself; it was how the market was using and moving data between providers without the data subjects having any reasonable understanding that that was what was happening to their personal data, or that or any reasonable way of controlling that happening. If the cookie replacements replicate those characteristic features that the consumers don't know what's going on and have no way of reasonably controlling what's going on, we'll be in the same hole again within 24 months.
Agreed.
Agreed, yes. And Dirk is also agreeing, but he says that the market starts to use the cookies in a correct way. What do you think about that, Charles? What do you say?
Well, I'm an outsider looking in, so I'm not going to say how the market's using or not using them, because if they were used properly and the data attributes related to an individual weren't moved around in such a way that you could buy around media owners with premium content by knowing the attribute of an individual and targeting them on a low value site, then that works. I have a lot of sympathy with the publishers that feel that they've destroyed their ability to charge a premium for content that they've invested in writing and distributing. But then I did work in publishing for 20 years at the FT, The Guardian. So I would naturally have that kind of sentiment. I like journalism.
Great, thank you. Yes, I think permission is great, and I think permission and consent is a great start. But I also think that cookies are traded in the background, and as you said, Charles, the user at the end doesn't know who at the end will target him and identify him on different websites. I think cookies will be replaced by universal IDs, and Ollie, I would like to know. Do you think that one ID will rule them all, or will there be several IDs cooperating and ruling the market, basically?
Yeah, there's not going to be one ID to rule them all. No, I don't think so at all. I think first and foremost, any future solution from a brand, their point of view, they need redundancy. So they can't necessarily afford to put absolutely all their eggs in one kind of universal ID only, certainly in the programmatic space. So, and I also think that competition won't die down either. It's as this space matures over the next couple of years, I think obviously the Winterberry analysis kind of indicated and hinted at the idea of how much growth and potential there is here. That's going to attract even more competition and more innovation, right? As newer companies enter the fray and provide different solutions. Obviously, universal IDs kind of fit nice in the programmatic space. Don't necessarily carry over too much into the kind of the MarTech space when you're dealing directly with PII. You kind of want to still keep them separated to quite a strong degree. So there's going to be a need for interoperability. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway. The thing that we're most interested in at the moment is that whatever happens, things have to be interoperable. That will allow over the next couple of years for companies to experiment and a bit more choice. And then as the market matures in a few years' time or goes through the next cycle, then we'll probably see some kind of standards or unofficial standards kick into play. But that's still going to be, quite a handful of companies, a good selection, not just one.
Exactly. This is what we see as well. I think it's important that an ID is interoperable, and there will be 3 to 4 IDs becoming the standard. There won't be just one solution. That's what we see as well. Great. Then we got one more question. I would like to take. So the question is, what should advertisers and publishers consider when evaluating ID solutions? I think it's depending on if you are an advertiser or a publisher. I think what's important for advertisers is that the ID solution has some reach, right? So if you want to address your customers, you need reach and publisher adoption to reach your customers. So reach is important for advertisers. I think on the other hand, for publishers, demand is very important. So if an ID solution is generating demand, coming from advertisers, agencies, and so on, I think it's an interesting solution for publishers to still generate high CPMs coming from data-driven marketing and programmatic advertising. I think on top of that, it's important that that the ID solution is based on an advanced technology like an identity graph and integrated with the ecosystem, right? With the DSPs and SSPs in the market. And of course, privacy and data security is something advertisers and publishers should also look into. These are, I would say, the four pillars I would look into when evaluating different IDs. Do you have something to add, Charles? Ollie?
No, I think it's scale is important, but you don't always just go for the biggest. You need to look at solutions that work in the different parts of the chain. And clearly, if you're a publisher, one of the interesting characteristics of last year was the changing view of SSPs within a whole year. At the beginning of the year, you're thinking, well, where does an SSP fit in this world? And at the end of the year, they're a critical component of publishers' use of identity. So it starts to become, it depends which part you talk about. And do you want scale and reliability? Do you want innovation? Well, you want a mixture of the two. So you partner with 2 or 3 people that give you the mixture, the fast moving and slightly dangerous, and the scale solution that you know is going to deliver, and work from there. And also what your resources can manage, because both technically and intellectually, you can't manage everything all the time.
Sure. Great. And Charles, you talked about, I would say, the non-identity solutions, right? The communal gardens and contextual. What do you think? How viable are these solutions?
I think they're really very viable, particularly when you look at augmented contextual, where if you've, as opposed to an 80-20 where you're 80% authenticated, 20% unauthenticated, if you're the other way around and you're 20% authenticated, 80% unauthenticated, the ability to have contextual laying across your whole 100%, build a model within your authenticated part that then adds authenticated knowledge into an unauthenticated contextual targeting solution starts to become really quite appealing. And you need to get under the skin of some of the newer ones coming out to know that, yeah, they're not solving exactly the same problem as identity, but they're coming as a part of the landscape that everyone's going to have to play with, because it doesn't matter whether you're where the majority of publishers and the majority of brands are going to want to use these technologies. So yeah, I've seen the evidence I've seen is that they work really rather well, but they're still fairly early days at scaling out to anything like the market size that the identity operators are playing at.
Are you the same opinion, Ollie, or what do you think how the market would look like if advertisers and publishers don't choose any proposed ID solution?
Yes, similar opinion. I think there's absolutely space and potential to grow. I think there's still probably fewer contextual solutions out there that operate at a relevant scale compared to identity solutions. So again, it all feels like it's very early days. Like it's actually, and we have to remember that it's not decided by any means. And I don't think that kind of any advertiser publishers are kind of going to willfully ignore. I think obviously to Charles's point, there was always going to be some kind of laggers falling behind a bit, to have to catch up, and maybe painfully so. But ultimately, the value exchange doesn't change, right? I think everyone's working towards wanting to maintain a free and open internet, because ultimately that status quo shouldn't change, right? We've seen that if you have paywalls and subs, that's only going to be relevant for a certain selection of content and media. So long term, this has to be solved. It just has to be solved in the right way rather than rushing through it. So And again, that's why we kind of all need to play together.
Agreed.
Good. Yeah, looking at the time, I think we still have 30 participants in the call, but yeah, thank you very much to you, Charles, and Ollie for joining the webinar, for running the webinar, for giving very interesting insights and sharing your thoughts and opinion. Yeah, thank you to all participants for joining us, and we will share the recording soon. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.